Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome to Speak Up Africa, where we aim to inform, engage, and empower the youth. So today we'll be discussing about the Finance Bill 2023, which has been the subject of endless debate among Kenyans for the last couple of weeks. So today we're joined by young lawyers today, and we're going to be delving into the Finance Bill. So before we go any further, I'd first like to introduce our lovely panelists. And maybe we can start with you, Miracle. You can introduce yourself to our audience today.
Just confirm that you can get me. My name is
Yes.
Miracle Mudei. I'm a finalist student at the University of Nairobi, Faculty of Law. Yes, I really love issues around public law, and I'm very passionate about the law in the totality of it. And I'm very happy to discuss this here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miracle. Mwasa.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I hope all of you are doing okay. On my end, I am equally fine. And I look forward to having a very engaging discussion on the topic we have today. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mwasa. Urakaru. Okay, I guess Daniel is experiencing a glitch. So just to confirm whether Miracle and Mwasa, can you still hear me?
I can still hear you.
Okay. Oh, Murakaru seems to be back. Murakaru, can you hear me? Okay. So I guess he'll join us when he can hear, once he sorts out his network issues. So yeah, without further ado, I think I can now introduce myself. My name is Salome Washuka. I'm a legal intern here at Speak Up Africa, and it is great to be here. Thank you for joining us today, and I think we can now just delve into the today's topic. So my first question, in no particular order. Now, the KRA set up a 6.831 trillion target, which they hope to achieve by the end of the fiscal year 2023-2024. Now, given the proposals entailed in the 2023 finance bill, do you, our panelists today, feel like, think that the target set by KRA can be achieved through the finance bill?
Okay, I think I'll go in fast on that. Um, the target set by KRA, so far the government in extension, for the upcoming financial year, now set to begin is at the end of this month once the budget has been read and the fiscal year comes to a close. I think it's quite ambitious, but I don't think it's possible if the authority maximizes the proposals that are currently in the bill. We have seen a large array of measures that the authority wants to implement, including bringing new tax bases or new tax nets into the revenue equilibrium, things on penalties and waivers, abolishing that. And I think it's achievable. So if the authority strictly enforces what it aims to achieve through the bill, then I think it's a target that can be reached. Yeah.
If I may also contribute to the conversations around that. According to Atia Waris is a tax expert and a professor of international tax law. Atia argues that Kenyans underpay their taxes. That Even the Kenya Revenue Authority does not tax Kenyans enough. But then I also feel like this is an overkill. If we've failed to achieve it over the years, and why will KRA be bold enough to assume that they can achieve this at last? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, I think Murakaru is back. Murakaru, can you hear us? Okay, so as we wait for Daniel, now I'd like to take you back to your answer, Miracle. Now, you've argued that KRA does not tax Kenya enough. Don't you think that the current tax regime in place, that don't you feel like Kenyans are already contributing more than enough?
Not necessarily. Even borrowing from the finance bill itself. I'm not advocating for the taxing of Kenyans or over taxation. I'm just bringing the situation that is on the ground currently. We have a lot of loopholes within our taxing system, and if we're not sealing them anytime soon, we cannot achieve this corporate plan target.
Okay, thank you. So we will be delving more into the loopholes in our tax regime later on. But for now, I also want to ask, now this bill aims to increase the tax base and increase the amount of revenue that can be collected by the Revenue Authority in Kenya. So now my question is, when we increase the when we increase the tax base and increase the revenue, don't you feel like, do you think pursuing methods in which we can better account for the revenue that is being collected will also be better off instead of just increasing the tax base? What happens to the accountability measures?
Is that still directed to me?
It's directed to everyone.
Okay, I think I'll also again go fast on that. In terms of accountability, I think really it's a question of how you look at it. Because to me, in terms of accountability, it's really in government expenditure and how this money is being spent by the government. And also accountability also entails cases of issues of corruption, issues of mismanagement of public funds and all that. So, do I think that currently there are sufficient measures to ensure accountability in the management of public funds, that is revenue collected by KRA? I think they're sufficient. What I think is really the problem in Kenya is just bad manners in terms of how we manage the revenue collected from the taxpayers, how the government manages its spending, how the government sort of like allocates money to certain services, and the whole issue of corruption. Because maybe contextually speaking, currently a large chunk of the revenue that will be collected will be used in servicing of our debts. And we can't run away from that because even the law itself says the money you get, the first thing you do, the first start of the consolidated fund, pay your debts. So now we're coming back again to we see we all know our debt situation. We are in a very tight debt situation. So if the government continues spending money or allocating money in a manner that seems irresponsible, though the chief economic advisor David Ndii the other day on when he had the interview with Citizen TV was of the opinion that even if we complain of the CAS's, the increase in budgets for the office of the president, the deputy president, it's still a small portion of the entire budget and all that. But I think there's also another aspect or another angle of perception, of a perception of accountability from the government. So if we're taxing us the amount of money that taxpayers are paying, and then what we are seeing every day in TV is these officers received money for furniture, for going out and all that, for projects that are stalling and all that. Then I don't think that there will be accountability. Even if you are told that it's negligible, I think the biggest challenge, even to the finance bill itself today, is that aspect of citizens having faith in the government. Because what is there is ambitious, yes, but as citizens, we do not trust the government to be accountable in how they spend that money. So I would think that measures are enough there. Is Parliament exercising its oversight well? It should, tighten its belt and all that. But I really think that from the government, it should really act in goodwill. And even in how it's allocating or managing the funds, it should try and have some sort of a perception of accountability and good fiscal use. So those are my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, good afternoon. Can I be heard first?
Yes, good afternoon, Murakaro. Yes, you may
Okay.
be heard. Yeah, I'd like to first
Kindly
introduce yourself.
let me know.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Daniel Murakaru. I am a finalist student waiting graduation in December, and I am a legal researcher as well as a human rights enthusiast. And I am glad to be here. And I don't know whether I can immediately jump into the question that you had previously asked about increasing the tax base, and there's nothing seemingly being done on the other side in terms of enhancing accountability. And I remember the other day there was a question on why the president has increased the number of CASs and also increasing the number of people in government, and people are worried in terms of enhancing accountability and transparency. And I really think that the transparency and accountability question in Kenya has been okay. And I think as Mwasa has mentioned, increasing the tax can can I still be heard?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh no. Okay. I was saying that increasing the tax base, as has been proposed by the finance bill, is indeed a good thing, considering how Kenya has a high debt ceiling, and so it is a good thing to ensure that we balance the domestic collection in terms of revenue as compared to the foreign debt that Kenya has been accumulating in the past few years. But again, there's a need to check the accountability space, because recently we find that we have a new EACC chairman, that is Bishop David Onginde, and we are really looking forward to do in terms of ensuring accountability in the use of funds, and whether his position is actually going to influence or bring a change in terms of corruption issues. For example, the just recent on accountability, in as much as we are working on increasing the tax base. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Daniel, for that. Now, my next question is directed to you, Mwasa. Now, Kenya is the first country in East Africa that is compared to Uganda and Tanzania to actually make an attempt towards taxing the gig economy, the digital economy. So, my question is, do you, through the introduction of the term digital content monetization, do you think that this that the finance bill effectively captures the gig economy and if ensures that they're equally taxed compared to people who earn a normal payee slip? And secondly, if yes, how do you think the government can best implement these policies? Thank you.
Thank you for that. We're going to later note, I'm beginning to feel that I'm really taking the lead, being fast on these questions. And make sure the three of us are not complaining. But in terms of the gig economy in Kenya, um, we are all aware it's a very obvious fact that the gig economy is basically freelance work done over the internet. It's not formal employment. It's just people coming together using the internet to sort of like create content and get money from that. In terms of the economy, you have things like paid promotions, you have social media influencers and all that. And I think the bill, I'll speak on it in two fronts. There is the aspect of the digital content monetization where creators now the money paid to creators of content, people watching these online gigs and all that, terms of social media promotions, sponsorships, and all that, they'll be subject to 15% withholding tax on the payment that will be made to them. Is that unfair? Is that what they are calling killing content? What some people might think is killing content, trying to stifle their content creators, and yet the government is not providing jobs? I do not think so. The motto of the KRA is essentially saying ushuru, tulipe ushuru, tujitegemee. And for long, this has been a tax base that has not been effectively taxed by the government. And really, if you're being fair, and if you go back to the principles of taxation, you're talking about equality and equity, going back to those principles, it is only fair that if you're receiving income and you're being paid to do something, then as your civil and patriotic duty to your country, you should also be able to pay tax. Is the tax excessive? I don't think so, because only 15%. It's the rate that's been there for professional fees, for management fees, consultations, and all that. So in terms of the withholding tax on the 15%, I think it's really in time. It comes to complement what we already have, the DST, which is the digital service tax, that that the government said that now slowly are phasing out from to come into the now two-tier system that is now being accepted all over the world. So that means that our DST, we are going to have to scrap that in time. But is it capturing what is the revenue base? Is the government going to profit from it? Is the government going to maximize it? I think yes, because it's withholding tax. It's once the payment is made, the agent should remit within 24 hours. So yes, I think should be able to get that tax base. Secondly, it's on the other tax, which comes to now things of crypto NFT, which is the digital asset tax. It's still around that economy and all that. I also want to speak about that. Globally, there's been an issue and there's been debate on how we are able to tax things like bitcoins, are we able to tax tokens, non-fungible tokens, are able to tax like all these coins, because we know that in Kenya, people are trading bitcoins. Roysambu Mirema, famously known for Watu Bitcoin, Watu and all that, all these Ethereum, all those coins and all that. But then again, you see, this is a tax base. The moment you make that transaction, it's now going to be subject to tax, which is that 3% of the fair market value of that. So the person, if now I sell to say Mr. Miracle here, a Bitcoin, which the value right now is around $50,000, one Bitcoin, and now, which is one Bitcoin, I sell to Miracle there, and then you see now the government initially did not have a way of taxing that. So this 3%, I would say it's even the rate. I think it's even lower. It should have been a bit higher, because you all know the fluctuations in Bitcoin and all that. So in my opinion, I think the digital asset tax should have been a bit higher, so to make it able to maximize and all that. And you look at the framework of how this tax is being introduced. So it's not only the person that is trading that, but if where that transaction is taking place, it's on a digital platform owned by a non-resident. Even this non-resident is also, expected to pay tax, also expected to register for tax. So I really think that through this bill, the government is really taking advantage of the gig and digital economy to scale. And I think that's a tax base that's now ripe, for the government to reap from. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I think I'd like to pose this question to you, Miracle. Now, how effective do you think is the policy of requiring agents, or rather people who own a platform where people can just transfer their digital assets, having them register through KRA or any other relevant authority, so that they can also tax the subscribers their subscribers on any transfer. Now, how effective do you think that policy is? Do you think it is easily implementable?
My 2 cents on that is that if we are not able to seal the loopholes that we've had in our traditional taxing system, how can we purport to go ahead and go into the new grounds of taxation where we still have very many loopholes? That's my one answer for that. One sentence answer.
Okay, thank you so much. Daniel, do you wish to add anything on that topic?
Yes, I'd I'd beg to differ a little bit in terms of ensuring that tax in the digital space is collected effectively. I think also KRA is going the digital way. It's has also started the tax invoice system whereby all invoicing of taxes has already now been digitized, such that if you are a company and you are doing your corporate tax via the old system, it won't be considered as tax. You have to comply with the new digital measures. And I think going now into taxing the digital economy, it's something that is effective, because again, if KRA ensures that its system are able to detect when someone is evading tax, then I know it will be a good system to collect, a good platform for us to collect taxes. But again, I understand the concern that Miracle has with regards to the loopholes that are there. And I think that KRA, through the year 2021, 2022, it has been able to show us that it can indeed surpass the targets for tax collection. And so I think for 2022 to 2023 and 2023, 2024, as it seeks to widen that tax base to the digital economy, it can do a good job if it ensures that it continues upholding and digitizing its own systems. Yeah. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Daniel. I'd like to remind our audience that they can also type in their comments in the comment section, and we'll also read out the comments at the end of this session. Now, my next question is, now there has been an uproar, especially on Twitter, with the proposal to have anyone who has a tax dispute to deposit 20% of the disputed amount before lodging an appeal to the Court of Appeal. Now, there's a rationale that will just discourage people from frivolously, lodging appeals with the Court of Appeal. But now, my question is it right to, is it fair on the taxpayers? Is that provision really fair?
If I may go first on that, when you look at the construction of our constitution, the import of Article 259, the interpretation of our constitution and our laws, and when you further go to Articles 1 and 2 of the Constitution of this, on the sovereignty of the people and supremacy of our own constitution, it says that power belongs to the people of Kenya and is supposed to be exercised only in accordance with our constitution, and that the constitution is supreme to anything else, and anything that violates the constitution is void. I understand that one, all citizens are supposed to fulfill their tax obligations. But then, in fulfilling these obligations, we have to look at the constitutionality, the lawfulness, and the equity of the taxation system. A taxation system has to be lawful, constitutional, fair, and equitable. When you further go to the constitutional provisions that provide the right to a fair trial, the right to access to justice, I do feel like that provision is void. And if at all this bill is going to pass, and when it will be taken to a court of law at the time, because I feel that would be the right time, I do feel like that is one of the provisions that is going to be declared unconstitutional. Because it usurps the right to access justice for the taxpayers. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. To Mwasa and Daniel, do you have any opinions on that?
Yes, if I may, the right to access to justice, as has been mentioned by Miracle, is one that is very central to our constitution. And I think the introduction of that cap, to the tax appeal is unconstitutional from the onset, because access to justice in Kenya has to be the right has been provided for in Article 48 of the Constitution, and it actually requires, the state to respect that particular right. That is not to do anything that is going to infringe on that particular right. So if it goes ahead and introduces a cap on any tax appeals that are going to be made from the tribunal, from the decision of the tax tribunal, then it would be impeding someone from accessing justice. Because at times, the tax appeals tribunal might give a hefty penalty. I believe when you were studying our tax law classes and we were looking at all those penalties and, adding them up, they were, they were hefty amounts. And those hefty amounts might, if you're required to pay a certain percentage before you then access an appeal, then it would be impeding on your access on your right to access to justice. In as much as I understand that it is meant to compel people to pay taxes and prohibit them from evading any types of tax, it is totally unconstitutional and contrary to human rights. Yeah.
If I may just go before Mwasa comes in, I think this matter has been dealt with the Supreme Court this year. That is in the case of Westmont Holdings Limited versus the Central Bank of Kenya. It's 2023, the KLR, where it was held that a security of costs is unreasonable as it impedes a litigant's access to justice. So when we impose a condition precedent before a matter can be heard in a court of law, that is contrary to Articles 48, 50, and 159 of our Constitution. So this security of costs that is being brought about, I think it's constitutional, it's unconstitutional and void from the word go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Mwasa, do you want to have a go at it, or?
I think a lot of wisdom has already been shared on that. I will not want to add any comments to try and dilute that, but only to point out a very funny part in a portion of that bill where they say that if at all you win at the High Court, the authority will have 30 days to refund you that money. And now we are in Kenya, they have 20% of your money and they're given 30 days. Now think about that, knowing KRA as it is today. Just don't know what they're saying.
Okay, thank you. So I think I have a follow-up question for you, Mwasa. Now, just based on your previous response, it is clear that the Kenya Revenue Authority has been given too much power, especially now with this new proposed finance bill. So do you share a similar opinion with me? And if yes, do you think is there a way in which the KRA can actually be put in check?
So please come again on the first part of the question. I think my network had some issues.
Okay, so based on your previous response, it is clear that the Kenya Revenue Authority has been granted excessive, if not too much power, especially now with the new finance bill. Now, my question is, do you share similar sentiments with me? And if yes, do you think there's a way in which we can keep KRA in check?
In terms of the power that the authority has been granted in the bill, I would say maybe a yes and a no, because it really depends on the angle looking at it from, in my opinion, in the sense that in some instances in the bill, the KRA, or rather even through the commissioners of income tax and all that, it has been given a lot of power. Now, straight into the conversation we are having on the requirement of the deposit, I think that's too much. And then I think another funny thing that the KRA has been given is the change on the requirements and conditions for the issuance of an agency notice, when under the circumstances under which the Commissioner for Income Tax can issue that agency notice. Now, in the current bill, the conditions under which an agency notice can be issued has been expanded, or rather has been there's more life to it. So there are now basically 4 new conditions that have been added to the existing one, which was let me just go to the 4 conditions. So if you default in paying your installment taxes, the commissioner can issue an agency notice. If you do not object to that assessment, now you have an objection to the assessment conducted by the commissioner. If you do not lodge an objection against that, an agency notice can be issued. And 3, non-appeal of assessment or objection decision. If you do not object or appeal that decision to the TAT or to the High Court. And finally, non-payment of taxes due. So an agency notice is usually issued, rather through an agency notice, the authority has, the power to collect the amount owed directly from a third party who holds or owes money to the taxpayer, such as a bank or a customer. So now, in my view, I think that's a lot of power that's been given to the commissioner, because, for instance, you won't be able to say you don't have money, because now once this notice is issued, and now the commissioner can come for third parties and all that. But also another thing, again, we have seen the powers of the commissioner in terms of the excise duty tax. The commissioner will no longer be able to, adjust the excise duty, tax to reflect inflation yearly. That is being abolished by the current bill, and I think that gives more flexibility, certainty, and predictability, in the excise duty regime. So I think for me on that, it will be like a yes and a no, depending on the various provisions you look at it from.
Okay, thank you. So Murakaru, I'd like to hear your opinions on that.
Yeah, I mean, tax. I remember when we were starting our tax law classes, and we were saying that tax is a necessary evil, and it is something that is very necessary in our country, especially looking at how the economic scales looks like, and also looking at the debt, the heavy debt burden that we have, and yet we are still a developing country that needs to develop in that sense. And so giving a lot of power to KRA again has to fall within the dictates of the constitution, because KRA, in as much as it is KRA, a body that is mandated to collect taxes in Kenya or manage the tax system in Kenya, still has to adhere to the constitution. And just commenting to what Mwasa has talked about, that is whereby KRA will now has been given the power by the finance bill to now go after third parties. This now means that it might infringe people's rights to, for example, the right to privacy. So what if I have a personal account that is not connected to my business account? Does it then mean that if I evade that particular tax, then, you will come and follow up the money that is in my bank, that is on my, on personal account basis? So it might infringe some particular rights, that is, the right to privacy, and also the right to be heard. Because if after being given that first agency notice, and then, after you're not complying by this particular time, then they'll then come after the third parties, it might infringe the fair trial rights. And also looking at the third parties' rights, what then happens, or what gives KRA the right to now come and, follow the third parties? So there's need to look at the power that KRA is being given, so that it doesn't infringe the constitution, or it doesn't infringe the rights that are therein. Because again, if it infringes the rights, this is what is now leading to people going back to court and challenging the decisions that KRA is making regarding tax evasion, and thus preventing KRA from meeting its targets. So the drafters of the finance bill need to go and look at it again and see how can they put power to KRA in such a way that it doesn't infringe on the rights of taxpayers. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Daniel. So my next question will be directed to you, Miracle. Now, Miracle, do you think that this finance bill actually places a burden on SMEs, that is small, on SMEs now, given the proposal that to increase the gross sales tax from 1% to 3%, and also the requirement, the lowering of the entry point for businesses with a turnover of to businesses with a turnover of 500,000 Kenya shillings annually from the previous 1 million Kenya shillings. Do you think this provision actually places a burden on them?
One, in a country like Kenya, I always have an issue with the Robin Hood principles that are applied in law from time to time. We've seen previously that was in 2019, the interest cap being removed, and then in the finance bill, you see this provision coming up again, Robin Hood provision, the hustler movement, in that provisions are brought in to favor a certain class within the society. I will not delve into the issue of discrimination and the violation of Article 27 of our Constitution that comes in. But then, I don't feel like this provision is going to promote the economic growth for small and medium enterprises. That's my personal opinion on that. I don't feel like, even if implemented, it's going to be efficient in doing that. So my answer to that will be there is need to bring your in Kenya. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't know whether I see a note of disagreement from Mwasa. Mwasa, do you?
I sort of agree with Miracle on stifling the small businesses, the SMEs. Yes, it might, but looking at it in its entire context, the entire provision, and you look at their great objective now in terms of the government is to increase the tax base. You do realize that number one, first of all, taxation is an art of balancing competing interests always. It's never just stuff like strike a balance between the government needs money, you also need to promote, SMEs and small businesses. But you read that provision, then you realize that something has happened. So initially, it was up to if a business was generating over 50 million, then that is when it was subject to the corporation tax at 30%. But then now the entry point for the taxation of now for the implementation of the corporation tax at 30%, it's no longer at 50 million, but anything above 15 million. So now what we have as turnover tax now being taxed is 3%. It's from between 500,000 all the way to say around 15 million. That's why we will do the TOT at say 3%. And I think what the government had in mind is, so now because we are trying to raise revenue, if we increase or that we decrease the entry point of SMEs to 500,000, then we are able now to catch more people, more businesses to pay the 30% corporation tax after 15 million. So for me, I think it was like a give and take, or rather a give take situation in terms of like where the government is coming from and trying very much to maximize its revenue collection like in the various tax bases. So for me, my personal opinion, I do think that the government is just trying to do like a give and take, with the end goal being maximizing revenue collection. Yeah, I think those are my 2 cents on that.
Okay, thank you so much. So now I'd like to switch to change the topic, and I want us to talk about something that has actually caused a lot of chatter on digital platforms. Now, I want to talk about the housing program. Now, would you classify the requirement that compels employees and employers to contribute 3% of the salary to this program? Now, would you classify it as a tax, firstly? And secondly, do you think it's even fair to place this burden on employees?
If I may go first, one, looking at Section 76 of that bill, which proposes to amend the Employment Act, number 11 of 2007, and impact the housing docket that is involved. And there's the imposition of it's more of a housing levy. So one, allow me to refer again to a precedent from the Supreme Court of Kenya. Sorry if you cannot. I like throwing case laws here and there. So recently, I think last year, in a case that is called the County Development Board case, that is the CBDs, the Supreme Court arrived at a finding in which the implication was that, for example, in this situation, a good illustration is this provision, that is Section 74 and 76 of this bill. So the Supreme Court said, in the provision of some services, the work of the national government is to come up with a policy framework. And then after coming up with a policy framework, it is the work or the role of the county government to implement it. So the role of the national government is limited to policy issues. That was one of the catches in that case. So I do feel like the national government is getting into the territory of the county government, since the provision of houses is supposed to be a county government function, and the national government is only supposed to come up with a policy framework. I'll come back on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So to Mwasa and Daniel, what are your thoughts on this program?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Sally, for the question. And the housing question has been one that, has raveled a lot of debates. And I think that aside, let me focus on the human rights issue and the obligation of the state with regards to the right to adequate housing. And, the right to adequate housing is provided for under Article 43 of our Constitution, and read together with Article 21 of the Constitution, the state has the obligation, to protect, promote, fulfill, and respect this particular right. And as we all know, the housing situation in Kenya has been one that is, deplorable. Seeing that not very many people have their own houses or their own homes. Most actually live in rented homes. And worst scenario is that we have a large number of people living in informal settlements, such as slums, as can be seen in Kibera, Mathare, Mukuru, Kwajenga, etc. And to some extent, I see where the current government is coming in when it tries to, impose the 3% housing levy, in that it is a government that wants to promote the right to adequate housing, especially for the hustlers, as they were driving during their campaign. And when you look at the hustlers, they're mostly the people who are living in the informal settlement, people living in Kibera and Mukuru, etc. But again, the question that comes in here is that, does it then mean that we need now to cut 3% of the income of people so that we can be able to guarantee the right to adequate housing? And the place where these two thoughts are not coming together is the fact that the people who are already earning an income, most of them, if not all, have homes. Like the previous days, or we have, as have we been watching in news, we have seen teachers saying that, why are you cutting us our income? And yet some of us already have houses, and some of us who, let's say if today you are teaching in a primary school in Nairobi, tomorrow you might be posted to a primary school in Kitale or in Busia. So it doesn't make sense for me to have a house in Nairobi and yet I'll be teaching in Kitale. So there are those dynamics that are coming in, and these are my 2 cents, or these are my thoughts with regards to the proposal of the finance bill to cut the 3% from the income. Yes, it is a good initiative. Yes, it is a good thought that the Kenya Kwanza government is considering the right to adequate housing. But is it the right approach? And previously we have seen it cannot be the right approach, because again, looking at the economic scenario in Kenya, how the cost of living has skyrocketed, etc., it would be a hefty burden on an employee who is earning some money to try and grapple with the daily cost of living. So what would I suggest? I would suggest maybe another tangent that wouldn't maybe come in with a finance bill. Maybe people can voluntarily contribute to the housing levy if you would indeed need the housing, or again approach the expressway route. Maybe contract a person who a foreign contractor, like what happened in the expressway, and then people will be paying to the contractor directly. So I think we can think of other ways other than introducing this measure. But if it were to be introduced, not now in 2022, 2020, not now in 2023-2024 financial year, considering the tough economic conditions that are there in. Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to pose this question to Miracle, still on the Housing Fund program. Now, do you think it would be wise of the government to actually turn to the private sector, just like our sister countries, Uganda and Tanzania, to actually accomplish this program instead of having to impose this burden on taxpayers?
One, I'm in agreement with Daniel on that provision. When you look at the import of Section 31 of our Employment Act, the law already imposes an obligation for employers to provide their employees with reasonable accommodation. And this enables employees to pay rent, in addition to the salaries paid. So imposing a housing levy obligation on the employers, I feel like it's going to be a burden to the employers, and it offends the law. And then to answer that, our constitution already provides for the sharing of functions between the national and the county governments. That is the 4th schedule of our constitution. So I do feel like when the national government is not competent, by law to take up this function, then why should they go ahead to donate the same powers to the private sector to do it on their behalf? So I feel like when we don't have a policy in place to enact this, it should be put on hold until we get one, and it should be in accordance to the law. We don't have to offend the law in order to reach or purport to provide social economic rights to Kenyans.
Okay, thank you so much. So I think I'd like to conclude this forum with one last question. Now, there is a proposal to raise the pay-as-you-earn tax on individuals, to raise the percentage of pay-as-you-earn tax on individuals earning more than 500,000 Kenya shillings a month from 30 to 35%. Now, do you agree with this proposal? Do you feel like it's fair, or do you think it's actually just imposing a burden on people who earn a lot? I think I'd like to first hear from you, Mwasa.
Okay, for me, I don't think there's anything wrong with it really, because there's always that notion. I absolutely believe that if you are rich, you should be taxed more. It only makes sense. It only makes sense. So I think the graduation of that scale to 35%, it makes sense because honestly, they won't even feel a thing if you're being honest. The people who won't feel so much of a pinch. If you're earning anything above 500,000, so that is in the range of people earning 600, 700, 800, 900, 1 million, 1.2, going all the way to CEOs of banks who are earning monthly salaries of almost close to 30 million. So I think it's something that should have been done a long time ago. Yes, so I think it's welcome. I think it's something that should be done. Yes, so I don't see a problem with it. The only issue I have with it is that as they were increasing it at the top, they should have considered lowering the minimum one to around say 10. It only makes sense. So because now we are getting more from the top, decrease from the bottom. I think that's now how we go. Really, we would really have emboldened the spirit of bottom up. Otherwise, the rest is just some. I don't want to say theatrics, but that's how you put your. Is it your foot where your mouth is, or vice versa? Something along those lines. What they say. So I think it's very welcome.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, I'd like to hear from you, Miracle, and also Murakaro as well.
In conclusion, it is not lost to me that Article 201 of our Constitution advocates for the sharing of a tax burden. It goes, and these provisions protect everyone in that we don't overtax the poor, we don't overtax the wealthy, but we have to share this burden throughout. So, in doing that, I feel like the burden, actually, the burden is being increased on a certain class of people. And our constitution, although pro-poor, it is also against discrimination. Oh, that would be my take on that.
Okay, thank you. What about you, Daniel?
Yeah. I do understand when Miracle talks about the tax burden being shared equally. But there's this thing that as Master has quoted, if you earn more, then you share the burden more, because this is taxation, and taxation cannot be, in as much as we say that we need to adhere to the principle of equality when it comes to taxation. I think equity also needs to come in, such that it wouldn't be discriminatory for people who are earning 500,000 and above to be taxed that 5% that is payee. So I don't think that it is in a way discriminatory. It is in a way, increasing the tax base. And yeah, it's a good move, especially seeing that the Kenya Kwanza government is really promoting the hustler narrative in that taxation. But again, as Master has said, maybe also it should have reduced to people who are earning maybe between below 100,000 maybe to 10% or 10 to 15%. But again, the tax burden must be seen to be shared equally. So I don't think it's a misfit or it's discriminatory. It's indeed in line with the constitution and the taxation principles. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I like that we are all in agreement on that. So maybe I think we should have started with this, but yeah, can we now just to as we wind up the forum, I'd like each of you to just give your general sentiments on the finance bill. Are there areas that you think should also have been included, and what do you feel should be revised by Parliament, yeah, before the bill passes?
Yes, I think I believe I can go fast since I have to rush a meeting into a meeting in I think the next 5 minutes. So I honestly think that the finance bill is ambitious. It's ambitious. It's ambitious in a very wild at the same manner, because looking at what the Kenya Kwanza government wants to do, it wants to do most of its developments without relying on borrowing or on public debt. And Kenya, as a developing country, and in the previous regime, especially the Uhuru Kenyatta regime, we were mostly relying on debts to carry out our development projects. And so President Ruto coming in and trying to and trying to direct his government towards, us getting revenue from the people other than borrowing, then is what is bringing us to to what we have on the table, that is the Finance Bill 2023. It is ambitious in a wild way, and to some extent, it is imposing a lot of burden on the taxpayers. And I think some things are reasonable, some things are not reasonable, as we have discussed. And my prayer is that when it is tabled to the Parliament, that the Parliament will be sane enough, and it will not consider which part of the divide they side on, because here we have real issues. We have a public debt that has already hit the 9 trillion mark, and we are, as Kenya, we are facing challenges in terms of paying. So we need to think of how can we increase domestic revenue. So the finance bill presents that, but it presents that in a manner that is overtaxing Kenyans. So we need to see how can we create a balance, and I believe that the Parliament will be gracious enough to discuss it and also say that this is how we, and give suggestions on how we can strike that balance. But generally, I'd say the finance bill is sane, considering the public debt burden that Kenya has currently. And with that, I'd beg to leave, and thank you so much, Sally, and to the Speak Up Forum for granting me this chance. And till we meet again, bye bye. Thank you.
Bye, bye, bye. Thank you so much for attending as well. I think we can hear from you, Miracle, then Mwasa.
During the course of these conversations, I dwelled so much about respecting our laws, respecting our constitution, a transformative one, the Constitution of Kenya 2010, listening to the people, listening to what the people at the ground are saying, been against these Robin Hood conversations around lawmaking, because at times they just tend to give more power to the powerful. My take on the Finance Bill 2023, as it is offending the law. And while the current government was campaigning, they promised to respect the rule of the law. They promised to respect principles of the law, like the separation of powers. But 6-7 months in, we've seen the executive hand on the National Assembly telling some members of parliament, if they don't do this or that, the bill, they won't get some favors, political favors that they've been initially getting. I just my very last take is we've seen from the past that all those who try to fight our transformative constitution of 2010 always end up as the victims. They are the ones, when the war ends, the ones who are mutilated by the very ordinary provisions of our constitution. So, and there's need for us. There's need for us to protect our constitution, the constitution which in turn protects citizens from arbitrary, unfair, and excessive taxation, as is contained in the Finance Bill of 2023. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Miracle. I think now we are ready to hear from you, Mwasa.
Okay, for me, I think I'll begin by saying that no finance bill will ever be perfect. That finance bills globally are, cocktails of perfections and imperfections. But as a common principle, I think it's always good, even as you are drafting laws, even as you are enacting policy, to have some form of common sense. You see, we got into this dead situation by trying to go for quick fixes. And now the government is trying to do is also trying to get us out of this dead situation by, trying to go for quick fixes again. So I think that most of the provisions there, they are put in, to try and get us out of this fix that we are in as fast and as soon as possible, without really considering the harm that has on the common mwananchi. We're already in a pit. So trying to, dig faster up to get out of it, you end up sliding even more, and you're even facing a chance of destroying the walls of that pit that you are in, and risking that pit collapsing in on you. So I think the government should really consider this bill. We're already in a tight fix. Employ common sense in the provisions that they want to be passed, and know that we took time to get where we are, and we'll equally take time to get out of it. So let's not be in a rush, and let's employ common sense in everything that we do. Yeah, so I think that's it from me. And thank you for having me here today.
Okay, thank you so much to our lovely panelists. It has been lovely having you here today. To our audience, thank you so much for joining today. I think you can just read out a few comments. Janet Karemi says that the country needs this conversation. Stephen Kamara says that this has been a very enlightening. Thank you. Michelle Mabinda says that this is such an interesting discussion. There is more to learn and understand when it comes to the Finance Bill 2023. John Budeka says this is a good conversation, and Eric Jeroge says it is important for the youth to reject the bill because we will suffer. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in. To our lovely panelists, Daniel in absentia, John Mwasa, and Miracle Mudei. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your perspectives and your thoughts on the bill. And to our audience, you can keep on commenting on our social pages. We are all over. You can also follow us on Instagram, on Twitter, TikTok, and yeah, we are all over. So just search Speak Up Africa with a K, and you will find us. Thank you so much, and do have a lovely afternoon.